You're listening to Straight Shooters, a straightforward golf podcast that'll straighten out your game. And here are your hosts, Keith Bennett and Henry Stetina.
All right, Danny, thanks for joining us today. Keith and I started the Straight Shooters Golf Podcast a few months back. We're looking to hear from top-level coaches, players, people in the world of golf who have some expertise to share with our viewers. Obviously, you've been in the game all your life, played high-level competitive golf, Division I at the Aggies, New Mexico State Aggie golf team, and then have been the women's golf coach assistant first, and then now the head coach for some years. And we want to hear a little bit about your experience. We'd like to hear a little bit about that WAC championship you guys just won and how you get the girls in tip-top shape to perform in something like that. So before we get started, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background, maybe a few minutes as to how you maybe got into the game, competitive golf, and then coaching.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I guess I got into the game kind of, I guess, on the late side compared to most juniors. I didn't start playing golf until I was probably 11 or 12. So I joined my stepbrother. He started playing, and I kind of fell in love with it from day one. So just kind of a few junior rounds here and there, growing up in middle school. And then when I got to high school, tried out for the high school team and started to get more and more competitive with it and realized that, okay, I could be, I could be pretty good at this. So started practicing more and more and turned into a decent high school golfer, I think. And was able to, be successful enough to be recruited out of high school and found my way down to New Mexico State and happened to have a an awesome time as an Aggie. And I think I really learned a lot about the game of golf as a collegiate player and just what it took to succeed on difficult golf courses and difficult events. And kind of, took that into coaching. So I've been the coach here now this is my 9th season. Started as the assistant for 5 years, and this is my 4th year as head coach. So we're rolling. I think I was able to join the program at a time where we were able to bring in some really good recruits and win a couple championships under the head coach at the time, Jackie Booth. She was a big mentor for me in that transition into coaching. So I guess that's about it. That's my story so far.
So that's cool, man. And I'm always curious when you're in high school or growing up and you said, you kind of realize that you might be pretty good at the game and might be able to play college golf. Is it shots you were hitting? Is it scores you were shooting? Is it your performance against your peers? Like, what was the evidence in your mind that said, I'm capable of taking this high school game to the next level? Because I think we hear that a lot from people where they're like, in college, when did you realize you could be a tour pro? Right. And they're like, you don't really hear kind of the mentality of what was the catalyst. So if you could think back, what do you think it was at that point where you're like, man, this might translate over to college golf?
Honestly, I think it was basically just scores. When I tried out for the team as a freshman, I joined a pretty decent team, and they were already competitive. So just to make that team and to start to make the top 5 as a freshman, kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. I said, okay, I'm doing this. And right. So just obviously having that competition against my peers, it helped a ton. But, at the end of the day, your score is what counts. So when I started to see those scores come, I kind of, had that excitement to it.
Yeah. And was it ever like you wanted to beat people, or was it just like wanting? Yeah. So it was a competitive to beat people?
Absolutely. Yeah. I hate to lose. To lose.
Gotcha.
You mentioned the scores. Just to give it some context, what were the scores that you were shooting as a freshman? And then what were they when you were a senior? And what did you do between then to improve so much?
Oh man, I don't know off the top of my head. Probably I was shooting anywhere from, I would say, average about like mid 70s to high 70s
As a freshman?
as a freshman. And by the senior year, I was probably averaging around 72, 73. And I think, honestly, the difference between freshman to senior year, I would say, is all short game. And just learning different shots as well, but mainly chipping and putting, I think, was the main determining factor.
So you get to college, and was there any sort of thought of maybe trying to take this to the next step after school, or did you get bit with the coaching bug while you were there? Like, was there moments where you wanted to play professionally, or were there just like, did you get infatuated with the whole coaching process of it?
No, it's funny because if you would have asked me if I wanted to coach college golf, at any point during my college career, I probably would have said no.
Yeah.
Which is the crazy thing. So I had no clue that I wanted to be a coach. And I did have professional aspirations. But being a family man and already having 2 children through college, professional golf doesn't always pay the bills for small mini tour players that are trying to grind out of their trunk.
For sure.
So I played a little bit out of college for about a year in a few different events here and there, but it never really turned into into a big professional career. And then stayed in the golf business for about 2 or 3 more years until I decided that I wanted to start coaching.
So the moment you decide you want to start coaching, is it like, I'm looking around at just what's out there on the job boards, or was it a real like, no, I'm going to stay in New Mexico State, or like, what's the process there? Because, I've had that thought myself, like, hey, it'd be cool. It'd be a blast to coach a Division I golf team, but like, shoot, where do you even start?
Yeah. And I'll be flat out honest. I fell into a great situation, and it's crazy how that happens sometimes with positions and just things in your life that just fall, in the right spots. But our men's position actually opened, our men's golf coach position here at NMSU opened, and I applied for that and didn't end up getting it. And then sure enough, within, I would say 2 or 3 months, the assistant position opened on the women's team. And I said, okay, what the heck? This is my foot in the door.
Right.
I'll go apply for that. And ever since then, I've fell in love with the women's game even more so than the men's now. It's incredible. And I wouldn't change anything, obviously, at the moment. But like I said, it was kind of crazy. It just kind of fell in my lap, and I just ran with it.
Yeah. So you went from not having any desire to coach to like, shoot, I'll be the assistant coach, and then loving it. I mean, it's really cool how that stuff happens. I mean, if you're open-minded enough and you're up for new experiences, I mean, stuff like that can, things you weren't even planning on can become your career, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned that you enjoy the women's game maybe more so than the men's game. Can you tell us a little bit about what those differences are and how you've gravitated towards really benefiting and enjoying the women's game?
Yeah, I think the women's game is definitely a lot more methodical than the men's side. I think part of the reason why I enjoy my job so much is that I get to teach these girls how to play the game of golf, because they come to us as range rats and only thinking about TrackMan numbers, things like that. And it's fun to get them around a golf course in practice. So that's number one. I think number two, it's a heck of a lot less stressful when you're not searching for golf balls. They seriously, they hit it dead straight every time.
Yeah.
It's nuts. So it's a lot more predictable, I think, for them. I know they wouldn't say that, but compared to the men's game, it is. And it's basically just teaching them a lot of short game and managing their games around the golf course is what I enjoy helping them do.
Yeah, Keith and I were chatting a little bit before you hopping on, and that was one of the big things we were wondering. In golf instruction as a whole, you hear so much, probably 95% on the golf swing and skill technique. And we were wondering, as a Division I coach, how much of that are you even teaching, and what aspects of the game are you spending most of your time working on?
Yeah, we probably, percentage wise, we maybe spend 10 or 15% of our time helping the girls with swing mechanics and things like that. And the rest of the time, like I said, is mostly all chipping and putting, a lot of wedges, and just course management and managing their games around the golf course.
So when you're doing that, are you collecting stats on all your players? Are you cataloging where each player is excelling, where each player is showing some deficiency, so that, if somebody's a killer short game, but like is struggling with the driver, are they going off and working on their driver while the group is chipping and putting? Like, how do you kind of keep all track of all your players at all times as far as what they need to work on, or is that on them to do?
Yeah, well, it's a little on both, I would say. It's on them to stay on top of it and kind of look at what their strengths and weaknesses are throughout the seasons. But we use an app called GameForge. I'm sure you have both seen that.
Yep.
We actually just switched to that this season, and it's been really helpful. So we're able to tell where everyone is strong at and what they need work with. And GameForge, it'll spit out drills for the girls based on their personal stats.
Mm-hmm.
So we use a lot of that in practice to where they can go off and do certain drills that are, that are based on how they're playing at the time.
So when they're off on their own, they're expected maybe to be doing the drills that the GameForge spits out. And then, I remember from my time in college, obviously we'd have group practice, right? And that's where you're competing against one another and you're maybe going out and qualifying and playing. So is that kind of how it works, where they're expected to be doing that sort of stuff and held accountable on their own? Obviously, there's got to be some form of independence, right? You can't, hold their hands through all this sort of stuff.
Right.
But where do you fall in your expectation level of your players to get better on their own?
So we, like you said, we our practices are tailored basically the same, to where we have usually about 2 or 3 full team practices a week, to where we're competing with short game contests and putting and chipping. And then maybe a day or 2 a week, we'll have a day where we just focus on doing those drills.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we always tell our girls that they can log on to their GameForge app and be ready to go with whatever drills are there for them to work on. So we definitely expect them to put more time in than just our team practice. So those are always available for their use.
Yeah, that's really cool.
How do you help prepare them to peak at the tournaments, or maybe the WAC championship, or something that's of importance? Do you go through some kind of a playing program? Do you look at players based on the courses that you're about to play? How do you go about picking the team, and how do you go about preparing them to peak at the right time?
Well, I think, throughout the entire season, we can kind of get a feel for, who our best 5 are that are going to give us the chance to bring trophies home. But as far as, getting ready for golf courses, sometimes if we're traveling to a course that we've seen before or competed on before, we'll set up our practices, based on what we're hopefully going to see in the event. For example, we're going to Stanford this Saturday for the regional. We've been playing a lot of long par 3s, a lot of shots from the rough, and just trying to make it as difficult as we can on the girls, while still instilling confidence in them and being ready to go. But I think the biggest thing is just, the things that we do at home before we travel will hopefully transfer over once we get to, wherever we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, 3-footers are going to travel, right? Like 3 and 4-footers, right? They're going to be those are going to travel, right?
Yeah.
We can always be working on those, but I think what you touched on right there that is just enormous for high school and middle school and aspiring collegiate players to hear is that like you're practicing situational things. You're practicing stuff that they expect to find, right? On the field that they're about to go compete on. And if you've had a practice round, if you've seen the golf course, like there's no reason you can't stand on the range and in your mind simulate what you're about to go do, or go try to drop some golf balls in a spot on the golf course at twilight or early morning or something where you're going to go hit some shots that you expect to go play. Like I can't tell you how many times you see just ball beaters on the range and then they just melt in the competition, right? And it sounds like that's like a very small amount of what you do, which I think is, obviously we're talking to somebody who's had a lot of success coaching, at the collegiate level. So I think that's just really cool insight to hear that you're not just banging balls on the range looking to, to get the club a little bit more on plane. You're, how do you get the ball to run up to the green if you're in rough, right? And you can't spin it or, downwind, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And that just goes to, one of my big things is I always get asked my philosophy on coaching. And I think the biggest thing that we try to do with the girls is we try to prepare them to where they don't necessarily need our help in an event.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we're there to help and we're there to coach every time we travel. But, if they're able to get to a tournament and play mostly on their own and be confident and aware of their situations and their games, then I feel like I've done my job. And we can just add in the small details, as we're there. But if they're confident, ready to go and feel like they can attack the golf course when it can be done, then, then we've done a good job before we even leave town.
Yeah, no doubt. And so you guys get on property, you're playing. I've always been interested in this, like, a lot of people don't realize that, you get to wander the golf course and talk to players and, coach them through shots, right? Like,
right.
Unlike other sports, like I don't think you can do that in collegiate tennis. I don't know if you can, or just other sports, right? Like you can't be out there in the heat of battle with the players. And for me, I've always been interested in the fact that, you've got five, players that are counting for a score, and you have to almost be a caddy for 5 players, not just one, right? Like if you knew your one player and you spent every week with one person, you would know their tendencies. You would know how they like to be spoken to. You'd know what lights a fire under their butt, whatever. But you've got to be kind of managing 5 different emotions, 5 people. Some people probably run hot. Some people run a little bit more mellow. How do you kind of keep track of all that during a round to say the right thing at the right time?
Yeah. That's the hard part is managing them once we're there as a group. It definitely helps to have an assistant coach when we're at our tournaments, because that's another set of eyes and another another person with experience that's been there, that can be out there helping. But like you touched on, it is tough to kind of get everyone to buy in to, our team culture and what we try to do at tournaments. We have a big thing called anchoring. So every time they leave a green or leave a tee box, they just throw up their hand to their teammate and just let them know to keep fighting. So it's just small things like that to where, they're playing for each other instead of just out there on their own. And I think that goes a long ways towards, everyone's attitudes and outlook for the day.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly experienced that myself. Golf's such a highly individual game. And, you throw, and then all of a sudden in college, you get thrown onto a team. Right. And, sometimes that can be tough for people. Sometimes that can be nice. Like I almost felt like you tried a little bit more, you concentrated a little bit harder when your putt wasn't just for, yourself, but all of a sudden it's for 4 or 5 other teammates. Right. And so you're way less likely to just bail on a round and throw in the towel. You're going to, you're going to grind it out, because you never know if somebody else on the team is struggling.
Right.
And, if you can turn in even par, or you can turn in whatever and, fight it out, that can go a long ways at the end of the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we, our motto, well, not our motto, but a big thing that we've talked about this spring is, it's fight till you sign the scorecard. Don't give up. Don't give up on a hole, because you might still be counting, even though you think you're not. It still could be a pivotal shot for the team. So that's been something that we've discussed all spring.
I think it's cool listening about your team culture and some of those methods that you've used to bring them together. From what I've seen as, working with college students, it's a really big transition for them, moving away from home, being away from mom and dad for the first time, having to do their own laundry, eating, and doing all of those normal daily life things. And then balancing school and golf can be really difficult. Then you get on the golf team and you have all these different types of people from different parts of the world, and emotions start running high, and they're competing against each other as much as they're playing for each other. And some get to go to events and some have to stay home. And golly, I could only imagine how difficult it is to manage the people and get them all on the same page.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, because that couldn't be more true, that they, they go straight from competing against each other for a spot to, playing for that person, a couple of days later. So creating that environment, and I think why we've been so successful is we've done a good job of creating a family style atmosphere within our team and our program throughout the years that I've been here. Everyone seems really close. They spend a ton of time together. They live together. So it's creating those bonds within each other that definitely, it goes a lot longer than just golf.
Yeah. And when we're talking about culture, right? I mean, is that something you look for, that buy-in ability, for lack of a better word, or teammate? When you look at an organization like Alabama, the Patriots, right? The Warriors, they're like teams that have gone on to, do a lot of things for, big things for a lot of years. They always talk about the culture in the locker room rather than individual skill sets. Is that something in your recruiting when you're finding players? Are you looking for the person as much as you are looking for the scores? Obviously, if you're shooting 89, you could be the greatest person in the world, but you're probably not going to make the team.
Right.
But, is there a lot of that goes into who you select?
Yeah, there's definitely the balance, and finding that is the big part, and just how they. One of the things that I like to look for when I recruit, obviously you look for the talent, the short game, the distance, all those that you want to check off. But you also look and see how they react after a bad hole, how they treat their parents before and after rounds, how they treat their competitors who they're playing with, the volunteers that may be there during the junior event that they're playing. Those things, those small things add up in the end. So if I'm watching someone that's a hothead that isn't treating anyone, nicer than a trash can, just because she may be able to shoot 72 consistently doesn't mean she's going to be good for our team and our team culture. So I think finding a balance of that is difficult, but it's definitely looked for sure.
I'm curious.
Sorry, Henry, go ahead.
I'm curious to expand on that a little bit more. I think Keith and I, are working with players that are getting close to that stage of wanting to play collegiate golf. And I think a lot of families aren't too sure as to where they might go and what they might do. And, some of the things that they might be doing sophomore, junior, senior year to prepare for college golf. And, the online websites are great for creating profiles and getting in touch with coaches. And I've just seen as an outsider, how many people come through there. How do you navigate through that as a coach to find the right one or two or three players that you're bringing on that season?
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
it does make it tough to kind of dwindle it down to, to the select few that are recruited each year. But I think, like I said, it's just going through each factor for each student athlete, and going down that checklist and seeing whether or not that they check off everything that's on there, and everything that we look for to want to bring in as a freshman.
What kind of events should they be playing in, right?
Yeah. High school tournaments are great as a, freshman, sophomore. I would say once they start getting a little bit older, junior and senior year, is when they really want to start to branch out to more regional type tournaments. And, a couple of the national junior tours are great to see. And then I like to see them play in tough qualifiers too, because I think those definitely prepare them well. While it's not a 36 hole event or a 54 hole event, you can find a lot out about a player just with a single 18 hole round that really counts.
So if some players, like, let's say, beaten up on some lesser fields, right, at an easier golf course, let's say, are you going to take into account, like, to me, sometimes, shooting 68, still shooting 68, like, kind of regardless of where you do it at some point. But if somebody's going out and shooting 75 at a brutal golf course, how do you where do you stand there? Are you looking to see how they handle themselves in the toughest conditions, or, if they're winners, right? If they just are winning a lot, there's a lot to be said for that too.
Yeah, I think there's definitely both spectrums. Is you obviously want to see the ball go in the hole.
Yeah.
If you're playing 6,000 yards, and you can shoot 68, 69, and you can shoot 72 or 3 from 6,400 yards, which is an average course for us, it's going to be very comparable. I think the determining factor that I look for is what yardage that the tournaments are played from.
Okay.
And that's a big difference, obviously, between that jump from high school,
yeah,
and some of the smaller junior events to some of the AGGIEs and some of the bigger tours that are out there. I think that's the biggest jump is just the yardage.
And are you looking for these juniors and up and comers? Are you looking at driving distance that they're hitting it? Is that a factor, or is it just how they manage their games on a bigger kind of college-esque golf course?
Yeah, I think more of how they manage themselves on a bigger golf course for sure.
Yeah,
because that's one of the biggest jumps, is going from high school to college golf is learning the distance of the golf courses that we play.
Yeah, I noticed some high school players and even college players who look at the golf team's scores and say, hey, I could do that. But it doesn't seem to compare based on the quality of the golf courses and the difficulty of the setups.
Yeah, and even you see it with our scores on our team. Usually our individual average score for a season is usually around anywhere from 75.5 to 77 over the past 4 to 5 years in qualifying. And typically you see that score rise in tournaments. So we can always, you can always add a few strokes going from qualifying here at home to competition.
Is that because the courses are getting longer, or that because they're tucking the hole locations a little bit more in tournaments? The greens are faster. What are the factors there? All of the above?
Yeah, I think all the above. It's just obviously a competition factor.
Sure.
Tougher golf course, usually more firm greens, quicker greens.
Yeah.
That can kind of get away from some. So just kind of all the above.
It might be based on player, but what do you see being more of a challenge when you guys go to longer golf courses, deeper rough, or faster and firmer greens? What seems to be the challenges?
The greens for sure. They, if they want to make a golf course tough, they roll the greens a couple times and double mow, that it'll show who the best golfer is for sure.
So in practice, is there any way that, is there any time where you get in touch with the course super at New Mexico State or anywhere where, kind of, hey, can we get a couple days worth of, tournament conditions? We're heading out to regionals. Is that ever a thing that happens?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we actually played 9 holes today as soon as we could after the US Open qualifier.
Nice. Yeah.
I wanted to get out there while the greens were still firm.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get 9 holes in, and then we're actually going to play 18 tomorrow on the same greens. So hopefully they'll still be just as firm and fast. But yeah, I usually try to get them on as hard of a condition as we can before an event like the one we're going to.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get them ready.
Yeah, I've always thought, it's such a shock to your system, even if it's your home course. For example, here when you guys play your guys' event, a few weeks, before they start to prep the golf course and the greens become lightning, and it almost takes away that home course advantage, because it seems like it's a new golf course. You're playing break that you had never played before.
Right.
And even, last week I played a few holes and the greens were getting pretty good. I thought it'd be such an advantage to be able to have this year round, where you guys could be used to that type of a condition for tournaments.
Yeah. And that's obviously we play on a public golf course where the greens need to be manageable on a daily basis. So they're not always going to have that tournament feel like they did today, day after day. But it's funny that you say that, because a few years back we had our invitational in October, and Carl, our superintendent, he had the greens, crazy hard, crazy fast, and I think we finished third, but we were way behind first and second place. And after the term, I said, Carl, what did you do? You scared my team.
Yo, chill out, Carl.
Yeah, because we had played on a soft golf course, soft greens, manageable speeds, for 2 months straight, and then we get to the tournament and they're rock hard. So it definitely freaked the girls out. So the more preparation that we can have on a setup that we're going to see, the better, obviously.
Yeah, it's almost as if it'd be easier to go to a different golf course, one that you're not familiar with, and just see the greens as what they are for the event, because you wouldn't know any different.
Right. Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yes. An opposing team coming in, that's all they know is NMSU playing firm. So they know they got to bounce it up on green. Yeah. I mean, you play a course and you're like, well, I've never bounced it into this green in my life. And now it's always an 8-iron from here. Like, every time I play it, now it's a, little knockdown 9 to run it up. It can be. So with that in mind, when you are going to go to the regionals coming up, I mean, now we're talking about, this course is going to be set up to be, the test to get to the national championship, obviously. So they're going to have it dialed in. Are you spending a lot of time on the putting green more so than on the range? Are we chipping out of the rough more so than we're hitting balls? Like, what are we doing when we get into the tournament site?
Yeah, we won't do a lot of putting this week at home, just because we don't want to, do a whole lot of speed work.
Oh, no, I meant when you get to regionals.
When we get there. Yeah. We'll do as much as we can the day we get there on Saturday. We'll probably do 30-45 minutes of putting, and maybe just a little bit of chipping to finish. And then, on Sunday we'll have our full practice round, and then probably do, a little bit of short game after that as well, just to, get down the speeds down as quick as we can.
Yeah. And what does a practice round look like? You've got 5 people all trying to figure out how they're going to fit their unique games onto one golf course, right? Like, again, you're caddying for 5 people, as opposed to your players, what they do week in, week out, right? So not every player is going to stand on that first tee box and see the hole the same way. Like, how is that on them, or is that kind of you're helping them navigate that? And then are you getting together after the round in the hotel room and kind of talking it out? Like, what's that whole process like?
Yeah. So we'll actually have 6 with us in the practice round because we're
individual.
we're able to take an individual just in case we have the opportunity to substitute a player if need be. So we'll be taking 6 with us. But I think the practice round is honestly the biggest determining factor on how the tournament is going to go. Because each individual player, like you said, is trying to match up what they can do well and how to attack the golf course.
Yeah.
And so we're determining lines off of tees, clubs into greens, how a player chips and putts based on where we're at. That's kind of more of the bulk of the work that we do when we get there is the actual practice day.
Are you guys playing for score? Are you guys playing for score at all? Are you guys dropping balls in the fairway, in the rough? Are you looking at distances as to how far the ball's flying? Are you working like hypothetical hole locations? Give us a walkthrough.
Yeah. So we never play for score. We try to just hit as many shots as we can off of the tees just to be comfortable with whatever club that they're going to go with. And then shots in the greens, we'll mess around with a little bit, just depending on how soft and how firm they are. And like you said, figuring out distances is big during the practice round as well, because going to Stanford, the ball is going to be going at least probably 10 or 12 yards shorter. So it's figuring all those things out on top of figuring out a game plan, for each player.
Are you looking at carry and total distances and having them kind of charted out to see some kind of a trend as to how far their ball's rolling?
Yeah, more or less.
And then another thing too, I've always been curious about, and I struggled with this a little bit myself when I was on the team, was like seeing somebody else's skill set that maybe I am envious of, right, on the team. And then maybe I might be a really good wedge player, but that, somebody's getting all the par 5s and 2, but I can't do that type of thing. Right. Is there ever, because you can definitely kind of get away from your own game playing with, against competitors you haven't seen before. There's social media everywhere nowadays. Everyone knows who's on everyone else's team, right? They see what they're doing, the scores, the tournaments. Like how are we making sure that players are sticking to their game plan and not trying to play someone else's game?
Yeah, that's also one of the benefits about the women's game. I feel too, is that they're able to kind of stick to their game plan a little bit better. And they're not drawn into the distance factor as easily. My shorter hitters that maybe can't get to a par 5 or 2, they understand that.
Right.
And they're not afraid to lay it up to 70, 80, 90 yards, whatever their favorite number is, to try to stuff a wedge in and make a birdie.
Yeah.
So I think that's a credit to them, because they don't necessarily, just give in and say, okay, she's hitting 3-wood. Why am I not going to hit 3-wood up by the green?
Right.
But that also goes to us as coaches. We kind of instill that in them that if you play to your strength, you're going to be better off than trying to, match someone else's game just because you envy it.
Right. And does it help to have statistics back that up? Like maybe you could say like, don't be afraid to hit it to 70 yards. You've been making, your scoring average from there is X, having all those numbers, I feel like kind of cements it in the mind a little bit too.
Yeah. And when we hit wedges down on our facility, we figure out our numbers that everyone's good at. And when we're in tournaments, we'll remind them, say, go hit the target.
Right.
Go lay it up to 75 yards and hit the target, just like you did in practice. So it's just kind of reminding them of what they're good at.
And I noticed that, you guys got a launch monitor this year, the GC Quad. Has that been helpful for figuring all that stuff out? Like you're obviously going to take it to Stanford, I'm sure, or maybe not, I don't know. But, would that be huge there to figure out distances and stuff?
Yeah, it's such an awesome tool to have. Every single stat that those things spit out is just information for the girls to have, to use in our events. So having that piece of technology is pretty big for our team.
Yeah, obviously distance control is a huge part of the game, and wedge distance control, I don't feel like the average golfer, let's say, or the aspiring collegiate is, that's the big thing I find. They don't know how far, their distance control just isn't a priority, right?
Right.
For the most part. And you feel once you get to a high level of golf, you're like, holy cow, this golfer can hit their, 70-yard wedge to within a 5-yard bucket, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can hit it hole high, you can still miss it 8 or 10 yards left or right every time and still be fine if you're hole high. But
right,
if you're 8 or 10 short or long and left or right, that's when
right,
it becomes an issue.
Right. Then we're then we got issues for sure.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever advanced past regionals?
As a team, we have. It's been a while. I believe the last time that we played in the national championship was probably 2001.
Okay.
So it's been 20 years.
So you weren't coach at that point.
Negative.
Gotcha.
I was just graduating high school.
Gotcha. So obviously, you've got a new golf course, but also you've got, the looming, hey, we can make it to the next step. Like, so, is there more of a one shot at a time mentality and not focus on the end result? Like, how does that mindset work? Because obviously at the end, the carrot dangling on the string is pretty enticing.
Right. And I tell the girls, I obviously one of our goals as a program is to make it back to the national championship. I think that would be huge for us and for the school, but we can only control what we can control.
Right.
We're playing in a stacked field. All 4 regionals are going to have 10 or 12 top 50 teams, out of 18 teams that are at each region. So it's not like we're playing cupcakes. So
right.
We're the 15 seed out of 18. So no one necessarily expects us to advance.
Right.
We're definitely not favored to finish top 6, but I think in our minds and our players' minds, we have to have that belief that we can make it through. And I really feel like we can if we get hot and are firing on all cylinders. We definitely have the group to do it. But like I said, we can't control what USC is going to do and what Stanford is going to do, what Arizona is going to do. We have to do what we do well, and at the end of the day, if it's good enough for a good enough score to advance, awesome. And if it's not, then we've done the best that we can do.
Yeah.
So
you're
mentioning these powerhouse schools whose players are, some of the very, very top players in the entire country or in the world, who are basically destined to making the LPGA Tour, some of them. I'm assuming that players who come to NMSU are also aspiring tour professionals, and maybe some of your playing experience can help you with this type of an aspect to it. But how do you prepare them to make that type of a jump if they want to become a professional following college?
I think it's, I haven't coached anyone yet that has made it on tour. So I guess that's kind of a still to be determined. But as far as what we talk about with our girls that do want to play professionally, it's basically just putting in the time and doing all of the small things that add up at the end of the day, and just being a good person, number one, being a good student, number two, and being the first one to practice and the last one to leave. I think, if you do those three things well and you still have professional aspirations, then you've put yourself in a good position to be able to make that jump.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's talent. What is it? Talent only gets you so far. What hard work beats talent, or talent doesn't work hard. I don't know the saying.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's cool. Going back to your point about the tournament, right? Like if the team gets hot, or if the putts are destined to go in from 25 feet, that maybe weren't going in, leading up to it, whatever the case may be. Golf is such a meritocracy, right? Like there's nobody at the end of the day that's going to say like, well, you looked cooler playing golf, so you guys are going to advance, right? Like,
right.
I don't care what that person, has done leading up to, what their world ranking is in the collegiate world rankings. Like that doesn't matter when we both put the tee in the ground on, the first hole of the event. I think that's what's awesome about golf, and what's always drawn me in is like, hell, if we go shoot the score, baby, we're in. Like, it doesn't matter what they did leading up or what their rank is in the event. Right. And that's the cool part about golf. Like, in other sports, like Roger Federer is not going to lose to like, a wild card round in the first round of Wimbledon. Like, you just never going to happen. Right. But in golf, like, that possibility is on the table at all times.
Yeah. And I think it's, whoever can figure out the golf course the best.
Right. And like you said, practice rounds are that's, you said, like, practice rounds makes or breaks. Right.
Yeah. And obviously we'll be competing against some teams that have played there more than us and, have maybe seen it more, but that still doesn't mean that we can be confident and comfortable on the golf course and go out and shoot solid scores.
Yeah, exactly. And you just get the team believing in that right there. And that might be all it is at the end of the day, right? Is that like, why not us mentality?
That's hilarious that you said that, because that's the name of our team chat.
Yeah.
It is why not us?
Yeah, there you go, man. I mean, it literally, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You got to believe first.
So you guys leave Friday early and you get there and you play a practice round on
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
We leave. Yep.
Leave Saturday, play practice round Saturday and Sunday.
Just Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Just one practice round.
And then tournament starts Monday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yep.
Gotcha. Man, that's tough. That's tough. One practice round. I mean, are you guys doing any work beforehand on Google Earth or Google Maps, taking a look at overhead satellites of the course or anything before you guys get on site? Or is it mostly just on step on the first tee and figure it out?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've coached on it and played on it before. And then my assistant has played on it, I think 2 or 3 tournaments. So we're both very familiar with it. And then we have one of our seniors has seen it in a tournament during her freshman season. So, that's been a while, obviously, since she's been there, but we'll have our Strackline books ready to go, on the first tee for the practice round. But other than that, I think it's just being prepared for some of the conditions that we'll see more so than, actual aerial shots of the course and things like that.
Now, are they giving you a pretty detailed yardage book for each player when you guys get on site?
Yeah, we'll have our full Strackline books, which is tee to green, and obviously all the slopes and everything once you're on the putting surface. So those are very helpful.
And that's something you get for every event, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So everyone's used to playing with those.
Yes. Yeah, and some of our players actually, all of them use it from tee to the green, and then once we're on the green, a couple of our players will occasionally look at it, but they're more of field type putters instead of wanting to look at the true numbers and arrows. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just varies from person to person.
Now, are those Strackline books new within the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, they're brand new with the new regulations, and I forget what the sizing is per page, but yeah.
And has that been a pretty big change in your coaching, like, helping read greens and stuff like that?
It kind of varies from tournament to tournament, I would say. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the greens a lot, and sometimes if I have a good feeling for if the girls are putting well and confident, then I won't step in too much to kind of be in their way.
Yeah.
Do we have one for NMSU golf course?
Yeah, we do.
Has it changed your way of reading the greens at all? I mean, it's kind of built on that hill. It's kind of weird to read sometimes.
Yeah, I think the only one it helps on is number 7. Other than that, I mean, I've played so many rounds on that golf course that have basically everything down, but I think 7's just about the only one that it's funny when you look at the book on 7 green, because those arrows are going there every which way. There's no general direction on that green. It's
Is that the one that was redone?
No,
it's
17.
Oh, 17.
Yeah, that's
okay.
17.
Okay.
7 is old number 9, where
Okay. Yeah.
going
I got you.
away, you're going away from A mountain a little bit, but at the same time, it kind of falls off on all edges
Yep.
and kind of has funky breaks in the middle of the green. So it's just weird.
Gotcha. Well, cool, man. Danny, this has been awesome. Wish you guys the best of luck. And obviously, we'll certainly be following you. And hopefully, people listening to this, when they hear it, they will be seeing you guys in the national championship, I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I feel like a celeb tonight.
Hey, Danny,
Yeah,
tell
man.
us where people can follow the team in the tournament, and then just in general, where can they find you guys?
Yeah. So golfstat.com, golfstat.com. We'll have our, all 4 regionals will be on there for live scoring. It'll be every 3 holes. So there'll be a link on there.
And that's called the Stanford Regional, or is it Golden State Regional?
Should be Stanford. Let me check while we're on here. Hang on. Yeah, Stanford Regional. NCAA Stanford Regional.
Awesome.
And then is the New Mexico State women's team on any social media platforms for people who are looking to see what the team's up to?
Yeah, we've got our Instagram is NM State W Golf, and Twitter, I'm gonna have to look that up. It should be, it's the same, NM State W Golf.
Not a lot of tweeting, I take it.
No, not a ton. If I have to look up the name, I don't use it a ton.
No.
And then NM State Women's Golf on Facebook as well. So we've got all 3 platforms, but I would say Instagram is the one that we're most present on.
Awesome. Well,
awesome, Danny.
Again, thanks so much, Danny. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy with prep and doing stuff, but yeah, best of luck, and we'll be following along and shooting you guys some good thoughts.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Danny. Take care, buddy.
All right. You guys too.
All right. See ya.